Hello all, and welcome to Miss Martin's Classroom. Thank you for tuning in this week for my latest Book Talk Tuesday podcast, where I share with you a bit about the characters and some engaging excerpts of the books themselves. What better way to know if a book is your cup of tea? If you enjoyed this series, then you also might like my Writing into the Day series. In this writing series, I will be reading mentor texts and providing you and your students some quick writing and/or discussion-based writing ideas that are ready to go to implement in your own classrooms. Today's podcast will be featuring a YA middle grade science fiction series that my students absolutely love. This is a world without disease, famine, war. Death as we know it no longer exists. However, in a world where death is no longer a factor, overpopulation is the newest plight. Mankind has searched for an alternative means to reduce the population. This is how the Scythes were born. Scythes are people whose job is to control the population. They do this through a method called gleaning, which is a kind word for murder. Citra and Rowan, two teenagers simply trying to make their way through high school, are enlisted as Scythe's apprentices. They must learn, and learn quickly, how to master the art of gleaning, as only one will make the cut. We must, by law, keep a record of the innocents we kill, and as I see it, they're all innocents, even the guilty. Everyone is guilty of something, and everyone still harbors a memory of childhood innocence. No matter how many layers of life wraps around it, humanity is innocent. Humanity is guilty. And both states are undeniably true. We must, by law, keep a record. It begins on day one of apprenticeship, but we do not officially call it killing. It's not socially or morally correct to call it such. It is, and has always been, gleaning, named for the way the poor would trail behind farmers in ancient times, taking the stray stalks of grain left behind. It was the earliest form of charity. The Scythe's work is the same. Every child is told from the day he or she is old enough to understand that the Scythes provide a crucial service for society. Ours is the closest thing to a sacred mission the modern world knows. Perhaps that is why we must, by law, keep a record, a public journal, testifying to those who will never die and those who are yet to be born as to why we human beings do the things we do. We are instructed to write down not just our deeds but our feelings, because it must be known that we do have feelings. Remorse, regret, sorrow too great to bear. Because if we didn't feel those things, what monsters would we be? Taken from the Gleaning Journal of H.S. Curie. 1. No dimming of the sun. The Scythe arrived late on a cold November afternoon. Citra was at the dining room table, slaving over a particularly difficult algebra problem, shuffling variables, unable to solve for x or y, when this new and far more pernicious variable entered her life's equation. Guests were frequent at the Terranova's apartment, so when the doorbell rang there was no sense of foreboding, no dimming of the sun, no foreshadowing of the arrival of death at their door. Perhaps the universe should have deigned to provide such warnings, but Scythes were no more supernatural than tax collectors in the grand scheme of things. They showed up, did their unpleasant business, and were gone. Her mother answered the door. Citra didn't see the visitor as he was, at first, hidden from her view by the door when it opened. What she saw was how her mother stood there, suddenly immobile, as if her veins had solidified within her, as if, were she tipped over, she would fall to the floor and shatter. "May I enter, Mrs. Terranova?" The visitor's tone of voice gave him away. Resonant and inevitable, like the dull toll of an iron bell, confident in the ability of its peal to reach all those who needed reaching. Citra knew before she even saw him that it was a Scythe. My God, a Scythe has come to our home. Yes, of course, come in." Citra's mother stepped aside to allow him entry, as if she were the visitor and not the other way around. He stepped over the threshold, his soft, slipper-like shoes making no sound on the parquet floor. His multi-layered robe was smooth ivory linen, and, although it reached so low as to dust the floor, there was not a spot of dirt on it anywhere. A Scythe, Citra knew, could choose the color of his or her robe, every color except for black, for it was considered inappropriate for their job. Black was an absence of light, and Scythes were the opposite, luminous and enlightened. They were acknowledged as the very best of humanity, which is why they were chosen for the job. Some Scythe robes were bright, some were more muted. They looked like the rich flowing robes of Renaissance angels, both heavy yet lighter than air. The unique style of Scythe's robes, regardless of the fabric and color, made them easy to spot in public, which made them easy to avoid, if avoidance was what a person wanted. He pulled off his hood to reveal neatly cut gray hair, a mournful face, red-cheeked from the chilly day, and dark eyes that seemed themselves almost to be weapons. Citra stood, not out of respect, but out of fear, shock. She tried not to hyperventilate. She tried not to let her knees buckle beneath her. They were betraying her by wobbling, so she forced fortitude to her legs, tightening her muscles. Whatever the Scythe's purpose here, he would not see her crumble. "You may close the door," he said to Citra's mother, who did so, although Citra could see how difficult it was for her. A Scythe in the foyer could still turn around if the door was open. The moment that door was closed, he was truly, truly inside one's home. He looked around, spotting Citra immediately. He offered a smile. "Hello, Citra," he said. The fact that he knew her name froze her just as solidly as his appearance had frozen her mother. "Don't be rude," her mother said too quickly. "Say hello to our guest." "Good day, Your Honor." "Hi," said her younger brother Ben, who had just come to his bedroom door, having heard the deep peal of the Scythe's voice. Ben was barely able to squeak out the one-word greeting. He looked to Citra and to their mother, thinking the same thing they were all thinking. Who has he come for? Will it be me? Or will I be left to suffer the loss? "I smelled something inviting in the hallway," the Scythe said, breathing in the aroma. "Now I see I was right in thinking it came from this apartment." "Just baked ziti, Your Honor, nothing special." Until this moment, Citra had never known her mother to be so timid. "That's good," said the Scythe, "because I require nothing special." Then he sat on the sofa and waited patiently for dinner. Was it too much to believe that the man was here for a meal and nothing more? After all, Scythes had to eat somewhere. Customarily, restaurants never charged them for food, but that didn't mean a home-cooked meal was not more desirable. There were rumors of Scythes who required their victims to prepare them a meal before being gleaned. Is that what was happening here? Whatever his intentions, he kept them to himself, and they had no choice but to give him whatever he wanted. Will he spare a life here today if the food is to his taste? Citra wondered. No surprise that people bent over backwards to please Scythes in every way possible. Hope in the shadow of fear is the world's most powerful motivator. Citra's mother brought him something to drink at his request, and now labored to make sure tonight's dinner was the finest she had ever served. Cooking was not her specialty. Usually she would return home from work just in time to throw something quick together for them. Tonight, their lives might just rest on her questionable culinary skills. And their father? Would he be home in time, or would a gleaning in his family take place in his absence? As terrified as Citra was, she did not want to leave the Scythe alone with his own thoughts, so she went into the living room with him. The man finally introduced himself as Honorable Scythe Faraday, just as Dad arrived home from work. The meal was awkward. Mostly silence, punctuated by the occasional comment by the Scythe. "You have a lovely home. What flavorful lemonade. This may be the best baked ziti in all of mid-America." Even though everything he said was complimentary, his voice registered like a seismic shock down everyone's spine. "I haven't seen you in the neighborhood," Citra's father finally said. "I don't suppose you would have," he answered. "I am not the public figure that some other sides choose to be. To truly do the job right, it requires a level of anonymity." "Right?" Citra bristled at the very thought. "There's a right way to glean?" "Well," he answered, "there are certainly wrong ways," and said nothing more about it. He just ate his ziti. As the meal neared its close, he said, "Tell me about yourselves." It wasn't a question or a request. It could only be read as a demand. Citra wasn't sure whether this was part of his little dance of death, or if he was genuinely interested. He knew their names before he entered the apartment, so he probably already knew all the things they could tell him. Then why ask? "I work in historical research," her father said. "I'm a food synthesis engineer," said her mother. The Scythe raised his eyebrows. "And yet you cook this from scratch?" She put down her fork. "All from synthesized ingredients." "Yes, but if we can synthesize anything," he offered, "why do we still need food synthesis engineers?" Citra could practically see the blood drain from her mother's face. It was her father who rose to defend his wife's existence. "There's always room for improvement." "Yeah, and Dad's work is important too," Ben said. "What, historical research?" The Scythe waved his fork, dismissing the notion. "The past never changes, and from what I can see, neither does the future." While her parents and brother were perplexed and troubled by his comments, Citra understood the point he was making. The growth of civilization was complete. Everyone knew it. When it came to the human race, there was no more left to learn. Nothing about our own existence to decipher, which meant that no one person was more important than any other. In fact, in the grand scheme of things, everyone was equally useless. That's what he was saying, and it infuriated Citra, because on a certain level she knew he was right. Citra was well known for her temper. It often arrived before reason, and left only after the damage was done. Tonight was no exception. "Why are you doing this? If you're here to glean one of us, just get it over with and stop torturing us." Her mother gasped, and her father pushed back his chair as if ready to get up and physically remove her from the room. "Citra! What are you doing?" Now her mother's voice was quivering. "Show respect!" "No! He's here. He's going to do it. So let him do it. It's not like he hasn't decided. I've heard that Scythes always make up their mind before they enter a home. Isn't that right?" The Scythe was unperturbed by her outburst. "Some do, some don't," he said gently. "We each have our own way of doing things." By now, Ben was crying. Dad put his arm around him, but the boy was inconsolable. "Yes, scythes must glean," Faraday said. "But we also must eat and sleep and have simple conversation." Citra grabbed his empty plate away from him. "Well, the meal's done, so you can leave." Then her father approached him. He fell to his knees. Her father was actually on his knees to this man. "Please, Your Honor, forgive her. I take full responsibility for her behavior." The Scythe stood. "An apology isn't necessary. It's refreshing to be challenged. You have no idea how tedious it gets. The pandering, the obsequious flattery, the endless parade of sycophants. A slap in the face is bracing. It reminds me that I'm human." Then he went to the table and grabbed the largest, sharpest knife he could find. He swished it back and forth, getting a feel for how it cut through the air. Ben's wails grew, and his father's grip tightened on him. The Scythe approached their mother. Citra was ready to hurl herself in front of her to block the blade, but instead of swinging the knife, the man held out his other hand. "Kiss my ring." No one was expecting this, least of all Citra. Citra's mother stared at him, shaking her head, not willing to believe. You're granting me immunity?" "For your kindness and the meal you served, I grant you 1 year immunity from gleaning. No scythe may touch you." But she hesitated. "Grant it to my children instead." Still, the scythe held out his ring to her. It was a diamond the size of his knuckle, with a dark core. It was the same ring all scythes wore. "I am offering it to you, not them." "But—" "Jenny, just do it," insisted their father. And so she did. She knelt, kissed his ring. Her DNA was read and was transmitted to the Scythedom's immunity database. In an instant the world knew that Jenny Terranova was safe from gleaning for the next 12 months. The scythe looked to his ring, which now glowed faintly red, indicating that the person before him had granted immunity from gleaning. He grinned, satisfied. And finally, he told them the truth. "I'm here to glean your neighbor, Bridget Chadwell," Scythe Faraday informed them. "But she was not yet home, and I was hungry." He gently touched Ben on the head, as if delivering some sort of benediction. It seemed to calm him. Then the scythe moved to the door, the knife still in his hand, leaving no question as to the method of their neighbor's gleaning. But before he left, he turned to Citra. "You see through the facades of the world, Citra Terranova. You'd make a good scythe." Citra recoiled. "I'd never want to be one." "That," he said, "is the first requirement." Then he left to kill their neighbor. With radical scythes on the loose, gleaning seeming more like stone-cold murder, and the very idea of justice in question, Citra and Rowan soon realized that not all is as it seems in Scythe by Neal Shusterman. This is truly a series you can simply sink your teeth into. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Also check out my hashtag MSMReadyToRead and follow me on Instagram at ms_martins_class for more new books and fun lessons that are sure to engage you and your kiddos. Be sure to tune in next week for my next Book Talk Tuesday podcast, and please comment below if you've read this book or another book by the author. Thanks for watching!